With the advent of social media, we can say a lot of things about both the good and bad that has come out of allowing everyone on Earth to share their opinions through a veil of anonymity and with virtual impunity. But one thing we've undoubtedly been given thanks to social media is a seemingly endless supply of new vocabulary and lingo. As your resident washed young adult, I was just young enough to be able to witness the rise of Vine and see the impact that had on the NBA. Such as James Harden's cooking celebration hitting the world hard, with his subsequent beef with Lil B going even further to help popularize the term based and the dance. But in recent times, now armed with the knowledge of the past and a firmer grasp of the internet and more doomer mentality than ever, I've been able to watch as one word has risen to the top and fully captured the imagination of the internet at large: the crash out. For the older viewer or those who are less abreast of internet culture, the word crash out is described as someone who, quote, constantly risks their life and future without fear of consequence. And this is an act that can take a variety of forms, especially when applied to professional sports and the NBA in particular. Whether it be a player crashing out via poor contract negotiations and betting on yourself going wrong, or getting on social media to beef with fans and organizations, or just straight up putting an opponent into a chokehold, there's an infinite database of crash out moments within the NBA. So for today's video, I've decided to take on a less serious topic and take a step back and look at some players and specific moments where NBA players have, for lack of a better word, crashed out, and how everything ended up playing out for them. For our first player on the list, we have Eric Bledsoe. The story of Eric Bledsoe is such an interesting one because it really gets at the heart of what makes social media so dangerous for everyone, and especially NBA players. And if there ever was a proper application of the phrase, be careful what you wish for because you just might get it, it's Eric Bledsoe. And it's pretty rough, because before everything began spiraling for him, he was a real problem in the league. Coming out of Alabama as a high schooler before the NBA, Bledsoe actually had some amazing foresight, as he was in John Calipari's first recruiting class that helped to revolutionize the NCAA, and he played his college basketball for Kentucky alongside John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins. But unfortunately for Bledsoe, since he too was a point guard, but not the highly coveted 5-star All-American that John Wall was, he didn't get to play his true position as a PG, but as a 2-guard he did overachieve, especially for being a relatively unknown prospect coming in. And now you may be asking yourself, why is this guy talking about Eric Bledsoe in college? I thought he crashed out in the NBA. And well, it's because his pre-draft scouting report was eerily prophetic. As when talking about Bledsoe as a player, it said, quote, his decision making has been questionable at times. A quote that would prove to be all too true a few years later. But Bledsoe would be drafted out of Kentucky with the 18th pick by the Thunder before ending up on the Clippers at the start of his rookie season. And he was decent, making the all-rookie second team, and throughout his tenure with the Clippers, while he never fully got the chance to emerge as a superstar, his elite play, particularly against the Miami Heat in a 2012 matchup, earned him the moniker of Baby LeBron from then-teammate Jamal Crawford. And with the Clippers looking to go in a different direction, and Bledsoe clearly being stifled in his role, in 2013, he was traded to the Phoenix Suns, where he'd emerge as a star. At the start of the 2013-14 season, with his new role secured, Bledsoe would kick off with a 22-point, 6-assist, 7-rebound performance. And his elite production would continue throughout the season, despite some persistent leg injuries, and people would begin to crown him as the face of the franchise. However, while it is an honor and elite accomplishment to be regarded as the face of any NBA franchise, aside from his first season where they won 48 games, throughout his 4-season tenure with Phoenix, the team was, for lack of a better word, absolute garbage. Nobody enjoys losing, and it's only natural for certain franchise players of that superstar caliber to desire a better situation. But in Bledsoe's case, while he was mostly regarded as the face of the franchise, by 2017, it was clear that he may not have been the superstar, since a certain 20-year-old 2-guard had dropped 70, and the front office may have been taking a harder look at a couple of their pieces, especially with Bledsoe growing more and more disgruntled with the continued losses. So with all this pressure mounting, after an 0-3 start to the season being capped by a 42-point loss to the Clippers, Bledsoe decided to veer off the road and begin torpedoing his own career by tweeting, I don't want to be here. Now I mentioned that Bledsoe has been adamant that he was in the salon with his girlfriend, and he was saying his tweet was referring to him wanting to leave the salon, and I can be sympathetic to someone having their words misconstrued on the internet because I see it all the time in my comments section. But I can only imagine that the Suns front office saw that tweet and collectively looked at each other like this, and 2 weeks later that brother was a Milwaukee Buck. Now this isn't a crash out at first glance. He got himself out of a bad situation and onto a contender with an all-timer in Giannis. And that would be true if he would have played good. Instead, while Bledsoe did end up balling out for Milwaukee throughout the regular season, he helped establish that Bucks pattern of being pure regular season merchants and absolutely selling the bag offensively when it came to the playoffs. So year after year, with Milwaukee repeatedly coming up short, despite Giannis's ascension, the finger was routinely pointed at Bledsoe's absolute lack of a jumper and his liability as an offensive player, further torpedoing his reputation from a slept-on franchise guard to a liability and playoff choker. And after 3 disappointing seasons with the Bucks, he was shipped out to New Orleans, then back to the Clippers, and soon after, he was overseas in China. From franchise player to literal Shanghai Shark in 5 years, and he all set it in motion by sending out a singular tweet. Tragic. This brings me to my second player on the list, Dillon Brooks. Now that Patrick Beverley has exited the NBA and there's not really a player from the old guard of the mid to late 2010s to hold it down, Dillon Brooks has become the man who holds the title of second biggest crash out in the NBA. Because right now nobody's catching Draymond. He's having a LeBron, MJ type crash out run. But with Brooks, it's an interesting case study because he's a crash out in the NBA sense in terms of being, respectfully, more bark than bite. And I don't mean that in a fully negative way. When I get to the final player on this list, you'll understand that the league wasn't always full of dudes who were purely trolls, and the advent of a 24-hour news cycle and more opportunities for players to get their opinions off has been a tool that a guy like Dillon Brooks has made unique use of in his quest to become the NBA's newest crash out. But for the better part of his career, as we've all seen, Brooks was honestly pretty successful in both his on-court and off-court trolling endeavors. Following his foot injury in the 2018-19 season, once he returned to Memphis and was able to play consistent minutes, he was a difference maker, defensively and offensively, helping alongside Ja Morant to propel Memphis into a legit title contender. And this contending status came with some extremely heated moments in games, but undoubtedly the most heated was the rivalry with the Golden State Warriors. And even though the NBA marketed it as a beef between Memphis and Golden State, the new kids on the block versus the old dynasty, if you watched any of the games, then you knew it was Dillon Brooks versus the Warriors. It honestly was a great rivalry because it had it all, from off-court beef with Draymond clowning Dillon Brooks on his podcast to great on-court moments in playoff series, and even the occasional dirty play and extremely heated moment. This legit was one of, if not the best rivalries that we've seen in the post-Warriors-Cavs era. And with the heated rivalry ongoing, the idea of Dillon the villain growing throughout the NBA, and I guess the general feel of receiving superstar levels of media attention, Brooks was feeling really good about himself and his Grizzlies squad heading into the 2023 playoffs against the Los Angeles Lakers. We all know that LA is a franchise that's prone to disappointments in the playoffs, and LeBron is over the hill, but by this point, Ja was already catching heat for his off-court incidents, and the league was beginning to look at the Grizzlies and their antics as negative PR, and with Ja being the all-star franchise guy, Brooks was unfortunately the one who caught the heat. Now, even though this is unfair, any sensible person realizing that there were questions about the maturity of your team and the validity of your media exploits would have taken the opportunity of playing against the face of the league for the past 20 years is one of those times you probably chill out and maybe allow your game to do the talking because your words have gotten you in some hot water. That's what most people would do. But instead, in perhaps the most spectacular, modern-day, non-physical NBA crash-out we've ever seen, following a Game 2 win against the Lakers, Dillon came out, called LeBron James old, and said, "I don't respect anyone until they give me 40. This is a crash-out for so so many different reasons. I'm all for trash talk, but for starters, in the game they had just won, the quote old man that Brooks was referring to had just put up a 28-point, 12-rebound double-double, which isn't super impressive for LeBron, but it was the highest scoring performance in the entire game with you guarding him. Number 2, why would you use the media to target the face of the league if you know you're in the hot seat? And 3, perhaps the most perplexing part of the situation, Dillon Brooks shot 35% from the field that game with 12 points. And to make things even worse, he went on to shoot 23% from 3 after calling out LeBron while being on the hot seat and losing the series. This crash out was so severe in nature that we got what I believe to be is a piece of NBA history, as following the series, the Grizzlies came out and said that under no circumstances were they bringing him back to the team for the following season. His own franchise, for which he had not only become a fixture, but a cultural setter and on-court leader, said that that is not our man's. A true masterpiece for the modern era of crash outs. But for our final crash, I'm gonna do you guys a favor and introduce you to the OG, the original, a man who is still crashing out to this day. For our third player, we have Charles Oakley. I quite literally don't know where to begin when talking about a singular crash out moment for Charles Oakley. When you talk about a menace, Black Air Force energy, the pure distillation of hatred and malice for malice's sake, you don't get any closer to that than prime Charles Oakley. In an era that deserves a video itself for being the golden age of crash outs, with dudes like Rick Mahorn, Bill Laimbeer, Charles Barkley, Oak was a guy known for his propensity for violence. And you can legitimately take your pick of whatever moment you'd like to think about. For the early portion of his career, when he was drafted to the Chicago Bulls to play alongside Michael Jordan, despite him being an elite rebounder and defensive player, that wasn't what made him Jordan's favorite teammate. No. What made him MJ's favorite teammate was the fact that he was literally willing to die behind some of these fouls. And at every given opportunity to crash, trust, he took it. Example, in a game against the Milwaukee Bucks during his second season, after being fouled and raked across the face by Bucks center Paul McKeskey, Oak did what Oak does and punched him in the face so hard he had to go to the hospital for a broken nose. Oh, well that's reasonable, he's just defending himself, you may think to yourself. Fine. What about this play against the Supersonics in December of 1989, where after Oakley fouled Xavier McDaniel, he pushed him over onto the ground, resulting in a wrestling match that spilled into the stands, getting both men ejected. And if you're still not convinced, allow me to play a game with you. Take a look at this play and let me know how you think it'll end. After watching as Doc clearly tried to make a play and save the ball out of bounds, will Oak A, recognize that it was unintentional and move on, B, dap up Doc for recognizing that the game is intense and they both want to win, C, walk away to get ready for the inbounds, or D, throw the ball at Doc Rivers and square up to throw a haymaker before having to be wrestled to the ground by two Hawks players and causing a bench clearing skirmish, aka violence. I think we all know which one he chose.
Yeah, come here.
The point that I'm trying to make is that Oakley was a Hall of Fame, ultimate, 99 level crash out. And yet, paradoxically, his crash outs simultaneously endeared him to an entire city and made him a legend for the New York Knicks. Even though he began his career as Jordan's enforcer, upon his arrival to New York in the 1988-89 season, he saw the beginning of his run as a legendary power forward and symbol of the Knicks and everything they stood for. His willingness to get violent on the court wasn't seen as aggression for aggression's sake by New Yorkers, but a refusal to let people punk you or disrespect you in any way, no matter how minor. And that not only helped shift the culture and set the tone for a rough and tough Knicks squad, but bring that on-court spirit that all New Yorkers embodied already in their day-to-day. In a weird way, Oak's willingness to throw it all away for respect and based on principle made him an indispensable figure to the Knicks. And this is a status that's endured the test of time. And ever true to his crash-out nature, Oak proved back in 2017, 13 years after his retirement, that he was still the same guy. as he was arrested in the Garden for making a snide comment towards Knicks owner James Dolan and subsequently thrown out of the arena and banned from MSG. But in a beautiful full circle moment, with the legendary CRASHOUT being punished for the exact behavior that made him a staple in the city, Knicks fans all stood behind him during his battle against the owner and rallied around the legend in his battle against the Knicks brass, calling out the front office for their mistreatment of one of their greats and proving that even within violence and disorder, you can find redemption and meaning to the people of New York through basketball. But with the Oakley bit over, we've reached the end of the video. The term crash out has invaded society, and we've seen so many other examples of this in the NBA. The topic just gave me a chance to talk about something more fun. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, because there's enough moments for this to become a true series, and it was ridiculously fun to research and make. But yeah, I hope you guys liked the video, and if you did, please be sure to like, sub, and I'll catch you in the next one.